You wake up to the ping of your phone, notifications stacked like a digital avalanche, news alerts, emails marked urgent, texts demanding answers. The day hasn't even begun, yet your mind is already fractured. You're not alone in this. The world moves fast, louder every minute, and it feels like if you pause for even a moment, you'll be left behind. But what if it's not the chaos outside that's overwhelming you, but your reaction to it? What if serenity isn't something you find when the noise stops, but something you cultivate even as it rises? That's where this begins. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to explore what it means to find serenity in a world that seems determined to rattle you. The truth is, many of the things that keep us up at night, deadlines, social slights, the latest round of headlines, would have seemed absurd to someone like Marcus Aurelius. And not because they didn't have pressure in ancient Rome. They had war, famine, betrayal, and plague. But they also had philosophy. They had Stoicism. So, before we go any deeper, take a moment to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, but only if you genuinely find this content valuable. And if you do, I'd love for you to post where in the world you're listening from. So, wherever you are, and whatever you're doing, I invite you to lend an ear for a little while, and let's explore this idea together. There's a moment, maybe it's during a traffic jam, or in the awkward silence after a tense meeting, where you suddenly feel like life is just too much. Like you're standing in the eye of a storm with no map, no anchor, and no control over what happens next. It's in that moment, not when things are calm, that you most need a tool to navigate your mind. And the Stoics offer one, not the promise of escape, but the art of remaining still. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That sentence, scrawled in his private notes, is not a motivational quote. It's a lifeline, because life is never going to quiet down for you. It will not make space. You have to make your own. And you do that not by pushing back against the noise, but by stepping behind it into a deeper awareness of your own response. Imagine your mind as a glass of muddy water. When you keep stirring, it stays cloudy, but if you let it rest, the dirt settles. Clarity isn't forced, it's allowed. And serenity, too, isn't something you muscle into place. It comes when you stop trying to control the chaos and start observing it. This is not detachment in the cold sense. It's not apathy. It's discipline. And no one knew that better than Seneca. As an advisor to Emperor Nero, he lived at the center of political madness. Power plays, corruption, surveillance. His world was a tightrope walk over a pit of knives. But Seneca didn't retreat. He wrote letters on the importance of inner composure, on using philosophy as armor. In one, he tells a friend, "If you are disturbed by external events, it is not the events themselves that trouble you, but only your own judgment about them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." Think about that. He's saying your reaction is the root of your suffering, not the event itself. It's not traffic that enrages you. It's your interpretation of traffic. It's not your inbox that panics you, but your belief that every message demands urgency. When you internalize that, even just a little, you start to see how many of your daily storms are self-summoned. And this doesn't mean you float through life like some serene ghost. It means you become deeply intentional. Someone cuts you off in line, and instead of stewing in it, you ask, "Is this worth disturbing my peace?" Someone disagrees with you online. Does it require your dignity? You get bad news. Can you accept that this moment is happening and still choose to respond with grace? The Stoics don't tell you to ignore emotion. They tell you to respect your agency. There's a strength in restraint, a kind of quiet heroism in pausing before reacting. That pause, that's your power. It's where the chaos ends and choice begins. And choice is what makes you human. You don't control what others say, what systems fail, what storms roll in, but you do control this, your next thought, your next breath, the posture of your mind. Serenity is not passivity, It's mastery over the one thing that's truly yours, your inner life. Imagine yourself now in the middle of your most stressful day, phone buzzing, deadlines looming, your breath shallow, your mind pinging like a browser with 50 open tabs. Then, imagine this. You pause. You feel your feet on the floor. You exhale fully. You ask, what can I actually control here? And in that moment, the storm might still rage, but you are no longer swept up in it. You are aware, grounded, here. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations from a spa. He wrote them while commanding armies, losing children, and enduring illness. His serenity was not given. It was forged. Yours will be too. Because this isn't about becoming unbothered. It's about becoming unwavering. You'll still feel, you'll still stumble, but you won't collapse under the weight of things that don't belong to you. You'll start to sense which battles are worth entering and which are only distractions dressed up as urgency. And slowly, chaos will begin to feel less like a monster and more like a wave. Not something you need to defeat, but something you learn to ride, to breathe through, to watch without drowning. So today, when the noise comes, and it will, meet it not with panic, but with presence. And remember, the calm is already inside you. The chaos just taught you how to find it. You spend hours thinking about something that never even happens. A delayed email becomes a pending disaster. A vague comment echoes in your head all night. You replay conversations, overanalyze body language, and try to guess how other people feel about you. And all the while, the day is slipping through your fingers. You're exhausted, not by what actually occurred, but by what you imagined might. You think you're being responsible, maybe even prepared. But what if you're simply carrying more than you're built to hold? What if the secret to peace isn't doing more, but surrendering what was never yours to begin with? You check the weather, not because you can change it, but because knowing helps you plan your day. You don't shout at the clouds to move faster or beg the sun to rise sooner. You accept what the sky offers and adjust accordingly. And yet, when it comes to your own life, your emotions, your setbacks, you act as if shouting could reverse the wind. This is where the Stoics start. With clarity about what belongs to you, Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, opened his teachings with one of the most powerful ideas in all of Stoic thought. He said, some things are up to us, and some things are not. That's it. That's the whole doorway. And once you walk through it, you never quite see the world the same again. Think about what's up to you. Your thoughts, your actions, your choices, your attitude. These are yours and no one can truly take them. Now think about what isn't. Other people's opinions, the past, random events, traffic, aging, illness, the weather, the economy. You can influence some of these things, but you can't control them. Not fully, not reliably. And pretending that you can, that's where the suffering creeps in. You wake up stressed about how your manager will receive your email, but you already edited it carefully. You already sent it. Your control ended there. You replay an awkward conversation in your head for hours, hoping to rewrite it. But it's done, fixed in time. And the more you tug on that rope, the more tangled it gets. Here's the core principle. You suffer more when you confuse what's yours to manage with what isn't. You waste emotional fuel trying to drive someone else's car, and often, that car's already in a ditch or halfway across the country. But it's hard, isn't it, to let go, to admit that your grip is tightening around things you can't change. There's an illusion of safety and control, even false control, and the mind would rather pretend it's in charge than face uncertainty. Epictetus didn't have an easy life. He was born into slavery, his leg was broken by a cruel master, and yet he taught that freedom begins the moment you stop assigning power to the external. In one story, when asked how he could remain so calm under oppression, he replied, I smile because I know my will is still mine. Your will, your attitude, your choices, these are the borders of your domain. When you stay within them, you feel centered, peaceful, even when life is chaotic. But the moment you wander into someone else's mind or try to rewrite events with worry alone, you lose yourself. So how do you begin to apply this? Start small. The next time you feel overwhelmed, pause and ask, is this within my control or outside it? Really sit with the answer. If it's within, act, do what's needed, speak the truth, make the call, adjust your posture, your breath, your mindset. If it's outside, let it go. Not out of indifference, but out of wisdom. Because here's the thing, you are not passive when you let go. You are powerful. You are redirecting your energy toward what can be shaped, toward what can change. You're conserving your flame for the fire you contend, not wasting sparks in the rain. Consider this. You're not responsible for other people's opinions. You're responsible for your integrity. You're not responsible for the outcome. You're responsible for the effort. You're not responsible for the storm. You're responsible for the sail. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And it's true. How much time have you spent bracing for something that never came? How much energy lost trying to anticipate every possible outcome? How many peaceful moments abandoned for scenarios that never needed your worry? When you grasp this principle deeply, something surprising happens. You become more effective, not less. You stop spending emotional currency on things that don't pay you back. You say what needs to be said and move on, without anchoring your self-worth to someone else's response. You learn to navigate storms instead of cursing the rain. And ironically, this also makes you more compassionate. Because once you realize that you don't control others, you stop trying to fix them. You hold space instead. You listen better. You respect boundaries. You become a stable force in a swirling world. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, a discipline, and you'll forget. You'll try to control the uncontrollable again. That's human, but the Stoic way is to return, to remind yourself gently, this isn't mine. And in that reminder, you reclaim yourself. Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a busy street, people shouting, cars honking, the sky darkening. You feel panic rising, then you close your eyes, you take a breath, and you say, what's mine to do right now? Maybe it's just to step aside. Maybe it's to offer help. Maybe it's to do nothing at all. But suddenly the panic is replaced with clarity. Not because the chaos is gone, but because you've stopped confusing it for your job to solve. So next time your heart races or your mind spirals into prediction mode, remember Epictetus, remember the boundary between what's up to you and what isn't, and choose again and again to stand firmly on your side of the line. You've been taught to run from hardship, avoid it, soften it, numb it, or turn it into content. We idolize ease, chase convenience, and call anything uncomfortable a crisis. But what if everything you're trying to escape is actually what makes you stronger? What if discomfort isn't a detour, but the path? You may not have chosen your hardship, but it's here, and the way you face it shapes who you become. Chaos doesn't just test you, it reveals you. And in Stoic philosophy, adversity isn't the enemy, it's the forge. You wake up to an email that shifts everything. A job falls through, a plan unravels, a relationship ends with no clear answers. The ground you thought was solid buckles beneath your feet. And in that moment, your first instinct is to retreat, to fix it fast, to smooth the edges. But what if, instead, you stayed? What if the obstacle isn't just something to remove, but something to respect? The Stoics believed that adversity is not only inevitable, but essential. Marcus Aurelius, who faced betrayal, war, and plague during his reign, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't just poetic, it's strategic. When you meet resistance, not avoid it, not resent it, you unlock something far more powerful than comfort. Growth. Think of fire. It needs fuel to burn. Without resistance, there's no heat, no transformation. And the challenges you face, those chaotic, uncertain moments, are exactly that, fuel. This isn't a romanticization of suffering. It's about how you choose to relate to it. Pain will visit regardless. But whether it shatters you or sharpens you, that's yours to decide. Take the life of Marcus Aurelius. He didn't want to be emperor. He was a scholar, drawn to books, not power. Yet duty called, and he answered. His reign was not peaceful. He dealt with military coups, personal loss, and widespread disease. And yet, through all this, he kept a private journal of philosophical reflections, not because he needed followers, but because he needed grounding. He wrote to himself, in the midst of chaos, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Imagine writing that as thousands were dying from plague, or when your own generals were turning against you. Marcus wasn't being naive. He was practicing. And that's what Stoicism is. Practice. Rehearsing how to stay grounded in the middle of discomfort. Rehearsing how to make use of the very thing you wish wasn't happening. You get bad news. You breathe. You lose something precious. You let it ache. Then ask what it's teaching you. You fail publicly. You resist the urge to shrink and instead reflect on what can be refined. The obstacle becomes the way when you stop resisting reality. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this?" Not to bypass pain, but to face it squarely and still move forward. Seneca compared adversity to weights in a gym. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. He wrote, "A Stoic doesn't seek pain, but neither do they flinch from it. They understand that strength comes not from ease, but from endurance, from choosing integrity over comfort, from choosing to show up again and again, even when you'd rather run." And here's where it gets personal. Think of your own life. The moments that changed you most, were they the calm seasons or the turbulent ones? Was it comfort that made you wise? Or was it challenge that made you reach deeper, speak clearer, love fuller? Hardship strips away illusions. It burns off the false stories you carry about what you need, about what you're worth, about what you think should happen. It leaves behind something raw, but real, you. And in that moment of exposure, you get to rebuild. Maybe slower, maybe scarred, but stronger, truer, more grounded in what actually matters. So, the next time chaos knocks, ask yourself, what if this is a teacher? Not one you asked for, not one you wanted, but one that leaves you with something lasting. Even now, you may be carrying something difficult, a quiet burden, a private heartbreak, a pressure that's grinding you down. You don't need to pretend it's easy, but you can choose how you carry it. You can choose what meaning you carve from it. Maybe the job loss teaches you to trust your adaptability. Maybe the rejection teaches you that your value is not dependent on being chosen. Maybe the silence from someone you love teaches you how to stand alone without collapsing. This is the fire, and you are not its victim. You are its student. Stoicism gives you tools, not slogans. It gives you practices, not platitudes. It tells you to journal through the pain, to sit with the discomfort, to ask honest questions, to become an alchemist of your own suffering, not in a mystical sense, but in a practical, daily way, transmuting frustration into focus, hurt into insight, fear into fortitude. And here's the reward, not comfort, but courage. Not a life free from pain, but a life unshaken by it. So the next time you hit a wall, remember Marcus. Remember Seneca. Remember that the Stoics didn't live in quiet gardens. They lived in broken empires, under threat and illness and betrayal. And still, they wrote, they taught, they practiced. And so can you. Whatever's in your path right now, whatever you wish wasn't there, take one breath and say, this is part of the way. Then move, however slowly, through it, not around it, not over it, through. Because you are not here to be protected. You're here to be transformed. You wake up feeling off, not a full-blown crisis, Just that dull hum behind your eyes. Maybe a text you didn't get, a project that suddenly feels too big, the news, the pressure. You can't name what's wrong exactly, but you're already tense, already spinning stories. You tell yourself to snap out of it, but the fog doesn't lift, and before you know it, your whole day is shaped by a feeling that may not even belong to you. Sound familiar? The Stoics knew this all too well, but they didn't try to kill emotion. They learned how to see it for what it really is. Weather, passing, not permanent, important, but not in charge. You're not a robot. You feel things deeply, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes inconveniently. And if you've ever misunderstood Stoicism as cold or emotionally repressed, here's the truth. Stoicism isn't about shutting down your emotions. It's about not letting them drive the ship. A Stoic doesn't deny sadness or anger or fear. They just don't let those emotions dictate their choices. They understand that while feelings are real, they are not always reliable, that they're messengers, not masters. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." That imagination, fed by unchecked emotion, is what turns discomfort into drama. And when you begin to watch your emotional weather like a sky watcher, something changes. You stop assuming that every cloud means catastrophe. You start to say, yes, there's anger. It's passing through. Just like rain, just like wind. And you stop bracing against it. You learn to wait it out, to breathe beneath it, to let it move without letting it move you. This isn't detachment in the cold, distant sense. It's clarity. You can acknowledge that you're overwhelmed without collapsing under it. You can name frustration without acting on it. You can feel grief without letting it define you. Picture Marcus Aurelius, waking up before dawn, his empire fraying at the edges. He's exhausted. Another war on the border, another political betrayal, another death in his family. He doesn't pretend to be okay. He opens his journal and writes, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. None of them can hurt me." Not because he's invincible, but because he's practiced. You start to understand emotional resilience is not the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of response. How do you build that mastery? First, you pause. You feel the anger rising. You don't suppress it, but you don't serve it either. You investigate it. Where is it coming from? What story are you telling yourself about it? Is it about this moment or something older? You learn to ask, is this true? Is this useful? You give yourself space. You let the emotion rise and fall without adding kindling. Because when you give feelings too much power, they grow out of proportion. A 5-minute delay becomes proof you're not respected. A quiet reply becomes a sign of rejection. An honest mistake becomes a narrative of personal failure. The mind fills in gaps, often with stories more dramatic than true. But a Stoic watches the story unfold without immediately believing it. They become the observer, not the reactor. Here's a tool you can try. When emotion flares, describe it like a passing storm. There's tension in my chest. My thoughts are racing. I feel defensive. Just the facts. Don't attach to them. Don't resist them. Let them move like clouds. Then ask, what would my wisest self do next? Sometimes your wisest self says, do nothing. Sometimes it says, step away. Sometimes it says, speak calmly. But it never says, burn everything down. Because here's the secret. Emotions are not your enemy. They're signals. They can point to wounds, needs, values, but they were never meant to steer the wheel alone. Even Seneca, who wrote volumes on reason, admitted that emotion would visit often. He just refused to let it unpack and live rent-free. He said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And emotional adversity is just as real as external hardship. The swirl of envy, the sting of shame, the ache of uncertainty. These are storms worth weathering, honestly, patiently, without surrendering your compass. And when you do this, when you resist the urge to fix, fight, or flee every emotion, you build something rare, a calm inside, a kind of gentle space between feeling and acting. You become someone who feels everything, but is owned by nothing. You still get hurt, still feel the pang, but instead of spiraling, you steady yourself. You return to breath, to presence, to principle. And that's where Stoicism becomes not just philosophy, but practice. When something hits you, an insult, a loss, a wave of doubt, you don't need to be immediately okay. You just need to return. You need to remember that this feeling is not your fate. It's just a passing system in your atmosphere. And beneath it, stillness, waiting. Your emotions are valid. Your reactions are optional. You're not weak for feeling anxious or sad or overwhelmed. You're human, but you don't have to be consumed by it. You don't have to let the weather decide your course. Instead, you choose your direction. You choose to wait until the sky clears, or you choose to walk in the rain with grace. Either way, you're choosing, not the storm. So the next time your feelings roar, pause. Let them speak, but not dictate. Let them pass, but not possess. Be the sky, not the weather. Because serenity isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of wisdom, even in the middle of the storm. They say your reputation is everything. But is it really? You work hard, stay consistent, try to be kind, but then someone misreads you. Someone twists your words. You hear about a comment made behind your back, and suddenly your stomach tightens. You replay conversations, wondering how you came off. You craft careful replies, not to express yourself, but to protect your image. And just like that, you're living not from the inside out, but from the outside in. What if the version of you in other people's minds isn't your business? What if being misunderstood isn't a crisis, but a test of your inner compass? You want to be liked. That's not weakness. It's human. You want to be respected, to be seen accurately, to be treated fairly. But Stoicism invites a difficult truth. Your peace cannot be built on other people's opinions, because opinions shift, perceptions distort, and if your self-worth is tied to that, you're building your house on sand. Marcus Aurelius faced this constantly. As emperor, every action he took was judged, whispered about, challenged. And still, he wrote, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. That line isn't dismissive, it's freeing. Because if your well-being is tied to other people's praise, it's also tied to their criticism. And then you're not living, you're performing. You start to filter your choices through the lens of what looks right, not what feels right. You hesitate to speak truth because it might ruffle feathers. You hold back your authenticity because it might not be liked. And before long, you're a carefully curated version of yourself. Impressive, maybe, but hollow. Seneca knew this pressure. He was accused of greed, of political manipulation, of hypocrisy. Some of the accusations may have held truth. Others were exaggerated by rivals. But he understood that public opinion was a tide you couldn't direct. He said, a good character, when established, does not fear the false accusations of the mob, any more than does a statue fear the jeering of children. Let that image sink in. The statue does not react, not because it's indifferent, but because it's anchored in what it is. It doesn't move to please, it stands. And you, when you cultivate your character, your principles, your sense of self, you become like that statue. Not stone, not unfeeling, but unshaken. So how do you live that way? You start by asking, what kind of person do I want to be? Not how do I want to be seen? There's a difference. One is rooted in your soul, the other in the shifting winds of opinion. And then you ask, am I living that way, regardless of recognition? The Stoics didn't chase fame. They chased virtue. For them, virtue wasn't moral perfection. It was alignment between values and action, between words and deeds, between intention and behavior. And ironically, Nate, when you live with that kind of integrity, your reputation often takes care of itself. Or it doesn't, but it no longer matters in the same way. You learn to let your actions speak louder than your defense. You stop explaining yourself to everyone. You stop trying to control the narrative. Because the truth is, people will misunderstand you. They'll judge from a distance. They'll create stories. But that doesn't mean you owe them your peace. You become someone who can be misjudged and still remain kind, still remain composed, still remain centered, not out of pride, but out of principle. Here's a simple practice. When someone says something about you, pause, don't immediately argue. Don't rehearse your rebuttal in your head for days. Ask, is it true? If yes, thank them. Harsh truth is rare. If no, release it. Unjust criticism doesn't deserve your energy. If it's a mix of both, learn what you can and leave the rest. This isn't about becoming untouchable. It's about becoming rooted. When you live according to your values, when your behavior reflects your beliefs, then you have nothing to prove. You simply live. And those who see it, see it. Those who don't, don't. And still, the temptation will come to correct every false narrative, to smooth every misunderstanding, to fight perception with performance. That's when you remember Epictetus, who said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That line cuts deep because growth often looks awkward. Authenticity often looks strange, and standing for something can look like stubbornness to those who don't understand. But you're not here to be universally approved. You're here to be true. Even now, you might be carrying someone's opinion like a weight, a comment that stung, a look that made you second guess. Let it drop. It was never yours to carry. Your character is yours. Your reputation belongs to the world. Guard one, release the other. And remember, the Stoics weren't emotionless statues. They were people who felt the sting of gossip, the pain of rejection, the fear of being misunderstood, but they practiced rising above it. They practiced aligning with what's right, not what's popular, and over time, they built a kind of dignity that could not be touched. So ask yourself today, not how you're being perceived, but how you're showing up. Are you living in line with your values, even when no one's watching? Can you stay steady in who you are, even when someone else gets it wrong? Because peace doesn't come from managing your image. It comes from managing your soul. You're brushing your teeth, but your mind is already racing. You're halfway through breakfast, and you've already imagined 10 future disasters. An awkward email reply, a silent phone, a string of what-ifs. You stare at your screen but can't focus. Your body's in the room, but your mind is 10 miles ahead or 2 weeks behind. You're alive, but you're not here. You think presence will come when things calm down, when your to-do list is clear, when the noise stops. But what if you've got it backward? What if presence is the antidote, not the reward? You keep reaching for the next thing, the next text, the next task, the next solution to a problem that hasn't even arrived. You treat your attention like a currency to spend anywhere except the moment you're actually in. But the Stoics would call that a kind of sleepwalking. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not what they do that should concern you, but what you do with your own mind." He was reminding himself, in the middle of war and illness, to return to the only place he had any power, this moment, this breath, this thought. You don't have to wait until your world is calm to be calm. You don't have to wait until your future is certain to be present. Because clarity isn't a product of control, it's a product of attention, and attention lives here. The present moment is the only space where you can actually make a decision, where you can listen, where you can breathe. Everything else is either a memory or a guess. But we've trained ourselves to abandon the present. You scroll while you eat. You rehearse arguments in the shower. You replay what you said 5 hours ago or imagine what you'll say 5 days from now. Meanwhile, the moment you're actually in goes unseen. And what happens when you live like that? You feel anxious, because anxiety is often just presence displaced, your mind sprinting into the future with no map, your body left behind, waiting. But presence isn't passive. It's alert. It's awake. It's choosing to return again and again to where your life is actually happening. Seneca warned about this tendency. He said, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours." That line stings, doesn't it? Because you know the feeling. You plan your day around what might happen, who might cancel, what might go wrong. And in doing so, you hand your peace to a future that hasn't even arrived. You ignore the one thing fully in your grasp, your response, right now. So how do you begin to reclaim the present? Start simply. When you feel your mind wandering into spirals or fears, pause and name what you're doing right now. Not in a lofty, poetic way, but plainly. I'm walking, I'm sitting, I'm talking to a friend. This isn't mindfulness for performance. It's grounding, a return to reality. Feel your breath, the texture of what's around you, the pressure of your feet on the floor. These are not spiritual detours. They're your anchor points, because the body is always here, even when the mind wants to run. And when you catch yourself forecasting the worst, ask, can I solve this now? If yes, do it. If no, set it down. Come back, again and again. Come back. Presence is not about perfection. It's about return. And it's a practice the Stoics took seriously. Epictetus taught that our job isn't to prepare for every possible future, but to act rightly in the moment we're in. When something happens, he said, the only question should be, is this in my control or not? And then, act accordingly. Notice the pattern here. Again and again, Stoicism brings you back, not to theory, but to attention. Not to future fortifying, but to present engagement. Because when you show up fully to this moment, you often find it's enough. Not always easy, but enough. You begin to realize how much you've missed. Not just beautiful things like quiet mornings or someone's laugh, but also important things. Small signals, gut instincts, opportunities to act with courage or kindness or restraint. Presence makes you more useful, more compassionate, more clear, and it starts with something as simple as your breath. Right now, take one. Inhale, exhale. That's it. You've returned. You're back. No heroic gesture required. And here's a paradox worth embracing. When you're rooted in the now, you're better prepared for later. Not because you've anticipated every outcome, but because you've built the muscle of attention. And attention helps you respond wisely, whatever comes. So next time chaos presses in and your mind wants to sprint ahead or rewind, pause, feel your feet, feel your breath, and ask, what is mine to do in this exact moment? Sometimes the answer is bold action. Sometimes it's waiting. Sometimes it's stepping back. But it always begins with being here. Because you can't live your values tomorrow. You can't be patient or brave or present next week. You can only practice now. The rest is a story you haven't written yet. You try not to think about it, but your mind goes there anyway. What if you lose your job? What if they stop loving you? What if something happens to someone you care about? You push those thoughts away, believing they're negative or dangerous, but they keep returning, late at night, in quiet moments, lurking behind the illusion of control. You tell yourself not to be dramatic, but the anxiety remains. What if? What if? What if? The Stoics didn't silence those questions. They asked them on purpose, not to suffer, but to prepare, not to worry more, but to fear less. Negative visualization. It sounds grim, doesn't it? Like some emotional doomsday drill. But to a Stoic, it's not about dwelling in dread. It's about being awake. Awake to the truth of impermanence. Awake to the reality that nothing and no one is guaranteed to stay. And from that wakefulness comes gratitude, perspective, and resilience. This practice was called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. But evils didn't mean wickedness. It meant misfortunes, losses, upheavals, things you don't want but might face. You imagine them, not to invite them, but to loosen their grip. Seneca wrote, He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. That's the Stoic view. When you've already considered the worst, you stop being shocked by it. You meet life on its own terms, not just when it's generous, but when it's ruthless. You imagine the loss of something precious, not to be morbid, but to love it more deeply now. You picture failure, not to collapse into despair, but to see that it won't destroy you. You consider death, not to flirt with darkness, but to remember that you are still here, alive, breathing. Take a moment now. Picture something you value deeply, a person, a place, a daily routine. Imagine, gently, what life would be like without it. Notice the ache. Then, notice the rush of appreciation. That's the point. The imagined absence intensifies the present reality. Negative visualization isn't about wallowing. It's about sharpening, clarifying. You wake up differently when you realize the morning isn't guaranteed. You listen better when you remember this conversation might never happen again. You love differently when you know loss is part of the deal. And ironically, the more you practice this, the less you're ruled by fear. Because fear thrives on the unspoken, the unseen. But when you look it in the eye, it shrinks. It becomes something you can carry, not something that crushes you. Marcus Aurelius, who buried children and ruled through plagues, wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." That wasn't a death wish. It was an invitation to live fully, right now, to waste less time, to forgive faster, to speak more honestly, to focus on what actually matters. When you deny the possibility of loss, you don't prevent pain, you just postpone it, and you increase your fragility. But when you stare it down, even for a moment, you build inner strength. You train yourself to say, even if I will remain. That's what this practice builds, not dread, but readiness, not pessimism, but perspective. You start to realize how often your suffering comes from being caught off guard, from the "I never imagined this would happen" moment. But what if you had imagined it? Not to obsess, but to familiarize, so that, if it does arrive, it won't find you completely unprepared. This doesn't mean you live in fear. It means you live with eyes open. You take nothing for granted. You stop coasting on autopilot. You savor your coffee. You text them back. You hold the hand a little longer. You stop assuming there's always next time. And here's the beautiful paradox. Imagining the loss makes the having sweeter. You see clearly that nothing is owed, that everything is on loan, that permanence is a myth. And instead of clinging, you appreciate. Instead of demanding, you receive. And that shift, that's freedom. Try it now. Picture losing something small. The routine of your daily walk, the corner cafe, the comfort of your worn-in sweater. Just for a second, imagine it's gone. You'll find yourself smiling at the idea that it's still here, that you still get to enjoy it, that nothing is promised, and yet you have this. That's the heart of negative visualization. Not to despair, but to notice, to cherish, to stop sleepwalking through a life that feels repetitive only because you've stopped seeing it clearly. Seneca again. Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day, not because we expect the end, but because we want to live ready, prepared, not paranoid, not grateful, not gripped by fear, aware, not obsessed. So the next time your mind spirals with worry, pause, ask, what's the worst that could happen? Say it, sit with it. Then ask, and what would I do? You'll be surprised how capable you are, how much you could handle, and how much more you're already equipped to face than you give yourself credit for. You begin to see life differently, not as something you own, but something you experience, not as something you control, but something you meet with presence. And when you train your mind to face what scares you, it no longer blindsides you. It teaches you. It humbles you. It sharpens you. Fear loses its bite, and life, real, unpredictable, beautiful life becomes vivid again. Comfort whispers that you're safe, that everything is okay as long as nothing hurts. Nothing's missing. Nothing changes. But deep down, you know the truth. Comfort is a temporary illusion. The second it's threatened, you panic. The Wi-Fi cuts out, and you lose your mind. Your flight gets delayed, and the day is ruined. Someone says no, and it feels like rejection is the end of you. When you're too used to comfort, life feels unbearable the second it isn't easy. But what if discomfort wasn't something to avoid, but something to choose? What if real strength is built, not in ease, but in practice? The Stoics had a name for this: voluntary discomfort, doing hard things on purpose, not to punish yourself, but to prepare yourself, to strip away the illusion that your happiness depends on external ease. Seneca urged his readers to occasionally sleep on the floor, wear rough clothing, eat plain food, not because he lacked luxury, but because he didn't want to be owned by it. Set aside a certain number of days, he wrote, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, is this the condition that I feared? Think about that. You put yourself in a controlled difficulty not to suffer, but to demystify it, to become familiar with lack, to meet it on your terms, and in doing so, fear loses its leverage. What happens when you practice discomfort voluntarily? First, your resilience expands. You no longer collapse when life doesn't meet your preferences. The cold shower, the skipped meal, the silence of your own company, they remind you that you are tougher than you thought, that pleasure is nice, but not required for peace. Second, your gratitude deepens. You stop mistaking convenience for necessity. You begin to appreciate the simple, hot water, warm clothing, a comfortable bed, not as entitlements, but as gifts, not owed, but received. Third, you free yourself, because the more comfort you need, the more vulnerable you are. The more you practice going without, the more you realize you need very little to be okay. Marcus Aurelius would often remind himself, ask yourself, is this something that is, in and of itself, unbearable, or is it your judgment that makes it so? You start to see, much of what you thought was intolerable is simply unfamiliar, and unfamiliarity fades with exposure. Now, this doesn't mean you need to become ascetic or severe. It means you build rituals that stretch your comfort zone on purpose. Take the stairs, turn your phone off, sit with hunger for 30 extra minutes, speak the truth when it's inconvenient. Go without validation for a day, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're training your mind to stop associating comfort with safety. Most people live on a leash of preference. I'm fine as long as they like me, as long as traffic isn't bad, as long as the coffee is hot, but every as long as is a chain, and voluntary discomfort cuts the links. You're not trying to be tough for the sake of being tough. You're trying to stop being so rattled by minor storms, so shaken by tiny deviations, so undone by daily inconveniences. And when bigger chaos arrives, as it eventually will, you'll have a foundation. You'll know, deep in your bones, that you can endure more than you believed. Because you've rehearsed, Epictetus said it plainly, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Voluntary discomfort shrinks your wants, not out of shame, but out of clarity. You realize that you can enjoy pleasures without depending on them, that you can pursue excellence without becoming addicted to ease. Try this once a week. Do something uncomfortable. Walk in silence. Eat simply. Skip a convenience. Not as a punishment, but as a training ground. As a gentle reset. As a reminder, I am not fragile. I do not need luxury to be whole. I can be cold, tired, uncertain, and still be centered. And the benefits go far beyond you. Because the less you fear discomfort, the more available you are to others. You can sit with someone else's pain without rushing to fix it. You can hear criticism without collapsing. You can show up in crises with clarity, not panic. You become someone who carries peace into the room, Not because life is always easy for you, but because you've practiced staying steady when it isn't. It's a strange superpower in a world obsessed with optimization and pleasure, but it's the ancient secret of the Stoics. The less you fear discomfort, the freer you are. And freedom, real freedom, isn't doing whatever you want whenever you want. It's being okay when you can't. It's keeping your dignity when things go sideways. It's not needing everything to go your way in order to feel okay. That's what Stoic strength looks like. Quiet, understated, but unshakable. So the next time life gets uncomfortable, and it will, don't rush to escape it. Pause, breathe. Remember, you've practiced for this. This isn't a crisis. This is a test, and you've trained your mind to pass it. Not with bravado, not with arrogance, but with calm, grounded presence. You don't run from discomfort. You walk with it, and you walk on. You avoid it. You scroll past it. You whisper around it like it might hear you. Death, the final unwelcome guest in every room. You plan your days like you have endless tomorrows. You push it off. Promise yourself there'll be time later. For the book, the apology, the love you keep delaying. But what if death isn't the enemy? What if remembering it is exactly what helps you live more clearly, more honestly, more fully? The Stoics didn't flinch from death. They looked it in the eye, not to romanticize it, but to be free from its grip. Memento mori, remember that you must die. A phrase carved into rings, painted onto walls, whispered like a mantra, not to create dread, but clarity, because death, far from being a threat, is the most honest advisor you'll ever meet. When you accept death, you stop wasting time, you stop sleepwalking, you start choosing deliberately. The illusion that you have forever, that's what steals your presence. Death returns it. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his journal as plague crept through his empire, reminded himself again and again, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Not in fear, in awareness, in alignment. This isn't about becoming morbid. It's about becoming awake. When you remember you're going to die, you stop living like you're already dead, numb, distracted, detached. You start living like someone who has something to lose, which is to say, someone who understands the value of now. Seneca put it plainly, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And that stings, because you know it's true. The hours lost to overthinking, to worrying about people who never think about you, to comparing, scrolling, numbing, and suddenly a year slips by, then 5. But when you carry the awareness of death, you don't waste time in the same way. You become more honest. You don't say, maybe next week, to things that matter. You say yes to what counts, no to what doesn't. You stop trying to impress and start trying to connect. The Stoics practice this constantly, not just thinking about death in theory, but in detail. They imagined their own funerals, wrote about the moment of final breath, not to wallow, to prepare, to remind themselves what's fleeting and what's worth doing before it's gone. And here's what they found. Remembering death doesn't shrink you, it enlarges you. It reminds you that pettiness has no place here, that ego games are for those who think they have infinite time, that anger, envy, regret, these are weights you can drop because none of them matter where you're going. So how do you apply this practically? You begin each day with a question. If this were my last, how would I live it? You don't panic. You don't overcompensate. You simplify. You slow down. You get honest. You make the call. You say, I love you. You forgive the thing you've been carrying too long. You look around, really look, and realize this is all temporary. And that makes it all luminous. Memento mori brings urgency, but not anxiety. It's not frantic, it's focused. Because when death is real to you, so is life. The taste of coffee, the smell of rain, the sound of someone laughing in the next room. You stop speeding through your life as if there's another, better one waiting around the corner. There isn't. There's only this one, and it's happening now. Even grief changes shape in this light. You mourn, yes. but you also treasure. You realize that the pain of loss is just love with nowhere to go. And instead of letting it freeze you, you let it fuel your presence. You let it teach you what matters. Seneca again, let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life, not to be somber, but to be sharp, focused, awake. You don't need to constantly remind yourself of death in dramatic ways. A simple breath can be enough, a pause, a whisper to yourself when you're caught in small worries. Will this matter on my deathbed? If the answer is no, let it go. The practice of memento mori is not about fear. It's about release, about lightening the emotional load, about giving you back your attention. And attention is life. The people you love, they won't be here forever. So love them now, not later, not better someday, now. The version of you you want to become, start moving toward them today, not when it's convenient. The projects you keep putting off, the conversations you delay, don't wait for clarity. Use the uncertainty to act now. Because this is it. This is your one wild, unpredictable, precious stretch of time. And if death teaches you anything, let it be this. Don't waste it. Let it guide you, not haunt you. Let it clarify, not terrify. Let it sharpen your sight, soften your heart, and steady your mind. You don't get to choose how long you'll live, but you get to choose how awake you are while you do. So live like you're dying, because in a sense, you are, and that's not a tragedy. That's a gift. You think you own things, your clothes, your money, your time, but how many of those things actually belong to you? You say my day, but one phone call changes it. You say my health until a diagnosis interrupts. You say my plans, but life rarely asks for your permission. And when things slip out of your grip, whether slowly or all at once, you feel panic. Why? Because somewhere along the way, you started mistaking temporary privileges for permanent possessions. The Stoics offer a different lens. Own less, cling less, and you'll suffer less, especially when you realize not even time is truly yours. You assume tomorrow is yours, that you'll have another chance, another conversation, another season to fix what you've postponed. But as Seneca reminds us, you act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. You fear death, but you waste time. You fear loss, but you squander attention. You behave as though your days are infinite, even while knowing they're not. Time is not something you own. It's something you borrow. And the tragedy isn't that it ends. The tragedy is that you forget it's limited. You fill your calendar with obligations you hate. You give your energy to people who drain you. You scroll away hours that you'll never get back. Not because you're bad, but because you haven't practiced remembering. This doesn't last. The Stoics were obsessed with impermanence, not to be grim, but to be wise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You may leave this life today. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." It wasn't morbid. It was focusing. Every time he sat in a meeting, wrote a decision, or watched the sun rise, he reminded himself, this could be the last time. And in that, everything gained weight and grace. When you start to live that way, not in dread, but in depth, you begin to release the illusion of ownership. You realize your body is on loan. Your job is on loan. Your relationships even are on loan. And the moment you stop gripping, you start receiving. Because clinging does something strange to the mind. The more tightly you hold something, the more you fear losing it. The more you fear losing it, the more you try to control it. And the more you try to control it, the more it controls you. But if you loosen your grip, if you see each moment, each object, each person as something to appreciate rather than possess, suddenly your fear dissolves. Your gratitude deepens. Your joy becomes lighter, more agile, less needy. Seneca offered a radical invitation. Rehearse this thought every day, that you may not hang on to anything too tightly. Not because things don't matter, but because the tighter you cling, the more fragile you become. It's not just physical things either. It's your reputation, your titles, your image, your routines. You think they define you, but what happens when they shift? Who are you without them? A Stoic doesn't anchor their identity in what can be taken. They root it in character, in choice, in response. Take Epictetus, born a slave, physically disabled, impoverished, and yet he taught with clarity and confidence. Why? Because he didn't believe that dignity came from what you had. He believed it came from how you lived. He said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." And one of the strongest judgments we carry is the assumption of permanence, that this thing, this status, this person will always be here. And when reality corrects that illusion, we call it a tragedy. But the Stoic calls it nature, calls it the terms of the contract, calls it life. So what do you actually own? Only this moment, only your decisions, only your integrity. Everything else can be taken, changed, rearranged. And that's not cause for despair, it's cause for clarity. When you understand that even time isn't yours, you use it differently. You stop hoarding, you stop waiting, you start being where you are, with who you're with, for real. No hedging, no pretending, no deferring joy to some imagined future. You begin to ask better questions. Is this how I want to spend my hour? Is this worth the trade of my attention? Is this aligned with the kind of person I'm practicing to become? And if the answer is no, you pivot, gently, deliberately, without guilt, because wasted time isn't just lost opportunity, it's a kind of quiet self-betrayal. This doesn't mean you become hyper-productive or obsessed with squeezing meaning out of every second. It means you become aware. That's all. You walk through your days like someone who knows the value of what they're carrying. Because here's the truth. The more you try to own, the more you feel owed. The more you feel owed, the more bitter you become when life says no. But when you live with an open hand, with appreciation rather than attachment, you become light. You become agile. You become free. And that freedom, that's the heart of Stoicism. Not freedom from pain or from loss, but freedom from the illusion that those things are unfair. Freedom from the grasping, the entitlement, the constant reaching for more. You own nothing, not your body, not your youth, not even your next hour. But you do have this breath. You do have the chance to use what you've been given with intention, with grace, with awareness. So don't hoard your time. Don't cling to what's passing. Don't treat life like a possession to be polished and preserved. Live it. You feel it when things don't go your way. When you follow the rules, work hard, show up, and still get passed over, rejected, overlooked. You start to hear that voice inside. This isn't fair. You cling to fairness like it's a contract the universe signed, but it didn't. And the longer you wait for life to level the scales, the more bitterness grows. The Stoics understood this. They didn't waste time demanding fairness. They trained for reality, and in doing so, they became unshakable, not because life was kind to them, but because they stopped expecting it to be. There's a part of you that still believes in cosmic justice. That effort should lead to reward. That good people get good outcomes. That fairness is a universal currency. But Stoicism invites you to see the world not as it should be, but as it is. And what is it? It's unpredictable, uneven, messy, sometimes cruel, sometimes beautiful, always indifferent to your preferences. Nature doesn't play favorites. The wind blows on the just and the unjust. The virus infects the kind and the cruel. The opportunity goes to the prepared and the undeserving. That's not a flaw. That's the nature of the game. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's not the outcome that shapes you. It's your posture toward it. You're not here to control the dice. You're here to play your role well, no matter what the role. Seneca, too, wrestled with injustice. He was exiled from Rome on false charges. His name dragged, his influence cut. And yet, from that place of powerlessness, he wrote, "A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not." Why? because wishing doesn't change outcomes. But acceptance changes you. That doesn't mean you accept injustice with a shrug. It means you stop taking it personally. You act against it when you can, but you don't let your soul get poisoned by the unfairness you can't prevent. When you think life owes you fairness, every slight becomes a betrayal. Every obstacle feels personal. Every success that's not yours feels like theft. But when you drop the myth of fairness, something radical happens. You start seeing clearly. You see that good people suffer, that cruel people prosper, that justice is something you fight for in yourself, not something the world owes you. You stop arguing with what is and start acting with integrity, regardless. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? The Stoics trained their minds to meet life as it came, not as they wished it would be. You want things to be different. Of course you do. You want kindness to be returned, effort to be rewarded, truth to be honored, and often it is, but not always. And that not always is where your strength is forged. Epictetus, born into slavery, beaten, insulted, and dismissed by society, still taught his students that peace comes not from external fairness, but from internal clarity. Don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to, he said. Rather, wish that what happens happen as it does, and you will be happy. That line lands hard because it asks you to let go of the story you tell about how things should be. You lose the deal. Someone else gets the credit. A promise is broken. A door closes for no good reason. That voice inside rises. It's not fair. And maybe it's not. But does repeating that bring you peace? Does it help you rise from it? No. It keeps you spinning, stuck, bitter. But when you say instead, this is what happened. Now who do I want to be in response? You get your power back. That's the Stoic way. Not passivity, not indifference, but disciplined focus. You act where you can. You speak truth when it's needed. You hold your principles like an anchor. But you don't waste your life stewing in resentment when the world doesn't follow your script. Because it never will. The universe doesn't owe you symmetry, but you owe yourself sincerity. You can't guarantee outcomes, but you can guarantee character. And that's more liberating than fairness ever was. When you drop the demand that life be fair, you free yourself to actually live, to respond with grace, to endure without bitterness, to persist without entitlement. And ironically, that makes you more effective because you're no longer frozen by the injustice. You're focused on your role, your actions, your response. You stop being distracted by how others are treated and start being devoted to how you show up. So next time life feels unfair, and it will, pause. Don't deny it. Don't dramatize it. Just breathe. Ground yourself and ask, what's still mine to do? Then do it steadily, quietly, fiercely, because you're not here to be treated fairly. You're here to live with virtue, no matter the weather. You carry a story in your head that you're the center of everything. It's not vanity, it's wiring. Your pain feels larger, your victories more vivid, your opinions sharper than anyone else's. You walk into a room and instantly wonder how you're being perceived. You replay conversations, wondering what they think of you. But this you you're focused on, it's not solid. It's a shifting role, a costume, a temporary position in a vast, unfolding drama. And the Stoics would tell you, stop clinging to the role like it's your essence. Play it well, yes. But remember, it's not who you are. You're not the main character of the universe. And that's not an insult, it's a relief. Because once you drop the need to be the star, the world softens. Your burdens shrink. Your interactions stop being battles for validation and become opportunities to serve, to contribute, to act with grace. The Stoics believe that every person is assigned a role, not one they get to choose necessarily, but one they are called to play with integrity. Epictetus said it plainly. Remember that you are an actor in a play, which the playwright chooses. If it is your lot to play a poor man, do it well. If a cripple, do it well. If a ruler or a private citizen, do it well. For this is your duty, to play your part well. You don't control the script, but you control how you play your lines. And that shifts everything. You stop resisting your position, whether it's glamorous or invisible, easy or exhausting, and you start focusing on your conduct within it. You're a parent? Play that role with patience, even when you're tired. You're a team member, not the leader? Then support with clarity and excellence. You're a cashier, a caretaker, a creative in the background. Then you bring your full presence there, not because someone's watching, but because you are. The ego hates this. It wants credit. It wants center stage. But the Stoic ego dissolves into something more enduring: character. Marcus Aurelius, the literal emperor of Rome, had every reason to be consumed by status. Yet in his personal writings, he reminded himself daily to shed pride and return to his duties. Do your job without whining, without expecting applause, without needing a pat on the back. He understood something most people miss. When you cling to a role, you suffer when it ends. When your identity is tied to a title, a relationship, or a certain image, you panic the moment it shifts. But when you play your role with grace and detachment, you become free. When it's time to change scenes, you bow, not break. This doesn't mean being passive or bland. It means being precise, intentional, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, knowing how to act without needing to be noticed. You live with purpose, not performance. And this allows you to respect others too, not as competitors in your story, but as fellow actors, playing roles you may not understand. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Instead of seeing them as a villain in your script, you remember they're playing their part, however messy. It's not your job to correct every actor. It's your job to stay in character. This mindset breeds humility, not self-erasure, but right-sizing. You begin to see yourself not as insignificant, but as part of something bigger. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. Not because kindness will get you ahead, but because kindness is how you fulfill your role well." When your ego quiets down, your clarity sharpens. You stop chasing applause and start cultivating excellence. You stop trying to be seen as good and start simply being good. And when others misunderstand you, as they will, you don't crumble, because your role isn't theirs to judge. It's yours to inhabit with integrity. You begin to ask better questions. Not how do I look right now, but am I acting in line with my principles? Not did they notice me, but did I show up well, even if no one saw? And slowly, your sense of self stops depending on the spotlight. It starts depending on your values, on your choices, on your ability to meet each moment with intention, regardless of how small or unseen it may feel. There's a line from Marcus that anchors this: waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be one. You don't need a stage. You don't need a title. You need awareness, willingness, practice. You learn to play your role, today's role, with full presence. And when life calls you to switch roles, you adapt. Not because you don't care, but because you've trained for flexibility. You've let go of identity as possession. You stop being the hero of a story no one else agreed to, and you start being a participant in a shared story, one in which your contribution matters precisely because it's not about you. So the next time your ego flares, when you feel overlooked, underappreciated, or tempted to perform, pause. Ask, what role am I playing right now, and how can I play it well? Then play it fully, without complaint, without applause. And when the scene changes, bow, thank the role, and move on. Because you are not your role. You are the one who plays it with courage, with humility, and with peace. You look around and see disorder, deadlines missed, people acting irrationally, systems failing, plans unraveling. It's easy to believe the world is chaos, random, cruel, without pattern, that everything good is temporary and everything bad is permanent. And when you believe that, you brace, you clench, you live in constant resistance. But the Stoics didn't see chaos. They saw cosmos, not a spiritual bypass, but a shift in lens. Beneath the surface mess, they sensed a deeper order, one you can trust, even when you don't understand it, especially when you don't understand it. The Greek word cosmos means order, harmony, an elegant structure in motion. The Stoics believed the universe wasn't a mistake or a battleground of random misfires. It was a system, vast and intelligent, that you were already part of. Not the center of, but a strand within. That belief wasn't a crutch. It was a compass. When life unraveled, they didn't scream into the void. They looked deeper. They asked, what if this, too, belongs? Marcus Aurelius wrote, the universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. He wasn't saying suffering doesn't exist. He was saying it's woven into the design, that what seems chaotic may be purposeful, that what seems out of place may have its place beyond your current understanding. This mindset softens your grip. You stop demanding to know why. You stop demanding that everything happen on your timeline. You begin to participate instead of resist, and you start to notice something. Chaos doesn't always mean disorder. Sometimes it means transition, realignment, movement from one form to another. You lose a job and later see it freed you from a path that would have narrowed you. You get rejected and realize it was a redirection. A friend walks away and you're forced to grow in a way you never would have on your own. When you view life as chaos, you panic. When you see it as cosmos, you engage, you ask better questions, you stay curious. Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And nowhere is this truer than when we try to outguess the universe. We assume the worst because we forget the order behind it. We catastrophize because we think we're in charge of writing the whole script. But what if you're not the author? What if you're the reader or the character? What if your job is not to direct the entire play, but to understand your part and act with excellence within it? That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because once you begin to sense the larger pattern, you can let go of the need to control each pixel. You can say, I don't know why this is happening, but I'll trust that it's mine to walk through. Not blindly, not with naive optimism, but with disciplined surrender. You begin to let life shape you, not just serve you. You see each experience, even the painful ones, as a thread in the design. You may not see the tapestry now, but you trust there is one. And this trust doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerful. Because when you stop fighting reality, you can start working with it. Like a sailor who understands the wind doesn't obey, but it can be harnessed. Like a sculptor who sees the shape within the stone and doesn't curse its weight. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is life trying to shape in me through this? That shift changes everything. It makes you more patient. You understand that delay isn't always denial. It makes you more resilient. You know that what's painful now may become your strength later. It makes you more humble. You realize you are a part of something vast, complex and beautiful, something you'll never fully grasp, but can always respond to with dignity. And when others panic, you stay anchored. Not because you have the answers, but because you've made peace with not having them. The Stoics weren't detached from life. They were deeply engaged, but they chose to interpret events not as punishments, but as invitations. Invitations to grow, to let go, to realign. And when you begin to view chaos through the lens of cosmos, you don't lose your drive, you just lose your desperation. You stop needing to control outcomes and start focusing on effort. You stop resisting uncertainty and start working with what you do know. And most of all, you stop asking life to be easy and start asking yourself to be ready. So the next time life surprises you, when plans dissolve, when people disappoint, when outcomes twist, pause, breathe. Remember, this isn't chaos, it's change. Not randomness, but movement. Maybe not comfortable, but not meaningless. There is order here, not the kind you get to dictate, but the kind you can dance with. You may not see the pattern yet, but you can trust there is one, and you can keep walking through it with open eyes, a steady heart, and the quiet courage of someone who no longer needs to understand everything to remain at peace. Someone says something cruel. You feel it instantly. A flush of heat, a spike of adrenaline. The words hit, then echo, then stick. Maybe it's a betrayal, a dismissal, a subtle jab dressed as a joke. Whatever it is, It lodges in your chest and stays there. You replay it, revise it, re-argue it in your head. Hours pass, days even, and you're still carrying it. But what if you didn't have to? What if you could let the arrow pass through you, without letting it pierce your soul? The Stoics didn't live in a bubble. They were insulted, deceived, betrayed. They knew the sting of human behavior, the sharp edge of being misunderstood or maligned, but they practiced something rare: emotional deflection without emotional suppression. They didn't armor themselves with indifference. They learned how not to catch every arrow aimed their way. Epictetus said, "Remember, it is not he who gives abuse or blows who insults, but the view that these things are insulting. When someone provokes you, be sure that it is your own opinion which provokes you." That's hard to hear, because it means you're part of the loop. The pain doesn't just come from what was said, but from what you do with it. You add interpretation. You replay tone. You build stories. You take one arrow and embed it deeper with every retelling. But what if you didn't? What if you let it pass? That doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming precise. You start by noticing your instinct to react, to strike back, to defend, and instead of acting on it, you pause, you breathe, you give yourself space. You ask, what exactly am I hurt by? Is it the words or my interpretation of them? You start to see that offense is often optional. Not because people are kind, but because you are free. Free to choose what enters your emotional bloodstream. Free to choose what you carry. Marcus Aurelius said, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." That isn't about denial. It's about discernment. You still feel the sting, but you don't build a shrine to it. You let the arrow land. You examine it. Then you decide, does this deserve a place in my heart, or does it belong on the floor? Most of the time, it belongs on the floor, because most slights aren't about you. They're about the other person's confusion, fear, or pain. They're arrows shot blindly, reflexively, sometimes even unintentionally. And if you walk around catching everyone, you become a pincushion of other people's projections. But if you learn to let them pass, not deflect with sarcasm or bury them with shame, but truly let them pass, you become untouchable in the most grounded way. You don't become a stone. You become a stream, still moving, still feeling, but untrapped. Seneca warned against ruminating on injury. He who has injured you was either stronger or weaker than you. If weaker, spare him. If stronger, spare yourself. It's elegant advice. Don't retaliate when it costs your peace. Don't internalize what isn't yours. This doesn't mean you tolerate abuse. Stoicism isn't martyrdom. If a boundary is needed, you hold it. If a relationship is toxic, you step away, but you do it cleanly, without venom, without dragging the pain around like a badge. You begin to ask, does this serve my character? Not do I feel justified, but do I feel proud of how I responded? And when you respond with calm, not because you're suppressing, but because you're centered, something powerful happens. The arrow misses its mark. It flies, but it doesn't land. And the person who launched it, they lose their hold on you. You become that rare person who can be insulted without becoming insulting, who can be hurt without becoming harmful, who can feel without being ruled. And in a reactive world, that is a radical power. It gives you the ability to show up in difficult rooms, hold difficult truths, and still be rooted in your own values, not the chaos swirling around you. Try it. The next time someone jabs, literally or figuratively, pause, feel the initial reaction rise, then watch it, ask, do I have to respond? Do I have to carry this? Often, the answer is no. You are not required to entertain every provocation. You are not obligated to defend every misunderstanding. You are not defined by someone else's poor behavior. You are responsible only for your side of the street. And that street can be clean, calm, and clear if you choose. Let the arrows pass. Let the gossip float. Let the slights dissolve. Not because you're above it, but because you are finally free of needing to prove your worth to people who never understood it to begin with. So you keep walking, upright, unwounded, unapologetically peaceful. The world won't stop. The notifications, the noise, the obligations, The endless list of things that feel urgent, you try to keep up, try to stay ahead, but the more you chase calm, the more it slips through your fingers. You go on retreats, you rearrange your schedule, you download the mindfulness app. Still, peace feels like something out there, a place you'll reach once everything is done. But the Stoics would gently ask, what if it's not something to find? What if the stillness you crave is already here, beneath the surface, beneath the storm, beneath the noise? There's a line from Marcus Aurelius that holds this entire truth in its hands. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Think about that. Stillness isn't found in some distant location. It's cultivated internally, a retreat you carry with you, a silence you can enter even in the loudest places. This isn't about removing yourself from life. It's about standing inside it, fully engaged, fully awake, and still remaining undisturbed. You become the eye of the storm, not because chaos stops swirling around you, but because you've stopped reacting to every gust of wind. The Stoics weren't monks in mountaintop caves. They were leaders, soldiers, teachers, merchants, people in the mess, like you. And yet, they found a way to cultivate stillness, not by waiting for the world to slow down, but by changing their relationship to it. Seneca once said, "We suffer more from imagination than from reality." And much of what disturbs your peace isn't real. It's a projection, a story, a fear of what might happen, a replay of what did. But here now, when you strip away the noise, when you stop racing through thoughts and tasks and expectations, there is quiet, always waiting for your return. You might call it presence. You might call it awareness. The Stoics would call it logos, the rational soul, aligned with nature, in harmony with itself. Whatever you call it, you felt it before. That moment when time slowed, when your breath steadied, when you weren't grasping or resisting, just being. It doesn't require special tools. It doesn't demand perfection. It just asks for attention. A willingness to step back from the mental whirlpool and sit simply inside yourself. And this stillness, it's not emptiness, it's clarity. It's the place from which right action arises, right thought, right speech. You don't pause because you're passive. You pause so you can respond wisely. You don't breathe deeply because you're trying to escape. You breathe deeply because that's how you return. To yourself, to the present, to the only place decisions are made and lives are lived. Marcus called it the inner citadel, a fortress of peace that no insult, no chaos, no fear can breach. You carry it now. Maybe it's buried. Maybe you've forgotten, but it's there. And the more you practice accessing it, not once in a while, but daily, moment by moment, the stronger it becomes. It becomes your refuge, your reset, your resting place. You begin to realize no one can give you this stillness. No one can take it either. It's not bestowed, it's built. Each time you pause instead of panic, each time you observe instead of react, each time you choose patience, grace, or restraint, you lay another stone in the foundation of your inner peace. And over time, chaos loses its teeth, not because it disappears, but because you've stopped confusing it with danger. You learn to say, this moment is loud, but I don't have to be. You learn to say, this feels urgent, but I will move from clarity, not frenzy. You learn to say, let me return to myself before I act. And in that return, you find something deeper than stillness. You find sovereignty, the ability to live, to feel, to engage without being hijacked, the ability to meet each moment with equanimity, no matter its mood. And from that space, serenity is no longer a distant ideal. It's your baseline. Even when things break, even when people leave, even when the world burns, still, you breathe. Still, you stand. Still, you choose peace, not as a passive wish, but as an active discipline. That is what the Stoics offer. Not freedom from difficulty, but freedom within it. Not a life of numbness, but a life of depth. Not detachment from the world, but union with it on its terms, not yours. So go there now, to that quiet place beneath your thoughts, to that steady rhythm beneath the noise. It's waiting for you. It's always been waiting. So now, after all of this, after storms and silence, anger and letting go, what stays with you? It isn't a checklist. It's not a technique. It's something quieter. A posture, a practice, a promise to return again and again to the place within you that chaos cannot touch. Maybe your day will still be messy. Maybe people will still be difficult. Maybe plans will still unravel. That's life. But you'll meet it differently. You'll pause before reacting. You'll breathe before assuming. You'll remember that not every thought deserves your belief. Not every challenge deserves your panic. And when the noise rises, you'll know where to go. Not away, not outward, but inward, to your inner citadel, to the still point beneath the turning world. Let the others chase. Let the others scramble. Let them spin. You're anchored, not because life is easy, but because you've trained, and what you've trained, you now carry a calm that travels with you, a serenity earned. And that changes everything. So take a breath, take another, and walk forward, not as someone who's figured it all out, but as someone who remembers where stillness lives.